Good morning. Today's Bible reading comes from Acts 21 through 23. We are using the Seville reading plan for the year, and we are reading through the Message Bible. And so, with tearful goodbyes behind us, we were on our way. We made a straight run to Kos, the next day reaching Rhodes and then Patara. There we found the ship going direct to Phoenicia, and got on board and set sail. Cyprus came into view on our left, but was soon out of sight as we kept course for Syria, and eventually docked in the port of Tyre. While the cargo was being unloaded, we looked up the local disciples and stayed with them 7 days. Their message to Paul from insight given by the Holy Spirit was, "Don't go to Jerusalem." When our time was up, they escorted us out of the city to the docks. Everyone came along, men, women, children. They made a farewell party of the occasion. We all kneeled together on the beach and prayed. Then, after another round of saying goodbye, we climbed on board the ship while they drifted back to their homes. A short run from Tyre to Ptolemais completed the voyage. I think that's how you pronounce that. Ptolemais. We greeted our Christian friends there and stayed with them a day. In the morning, we went on to Caesarea and stayed with Philip the evangelist, one of the 7. Philip had 4 virgin daughters who prophesied. After several days of visiting, a prophet from Judea by the name of Agabus came down to see us. He went right up to Paul, took Paul's belt, and in a dramatic gesture tied himself up, hands and feet. He said, "This is what the Holy Spirit says. The Jews in Jerusalem are going to tie up this man who owns this belt just like this and hand him over to godless unbelievers." When we heard that, we and everyone there that day begged Paul not to be stubborn and persist in going to Jerusalem. But Paul wouldn't budge. "Why all this hysteria? Why do you insist on making a scene and making it even harder for me? You're looking at this backward. The issue in Jerusalem is not what they do to me, whether arrest or murder, but what the Master Jesus does through my obedience. Can't you see that?" We saw that we weren't making even a dent in his resolve and gave up. It's in God's hand now. And Master, you handle it. It wasn't long before we had our luggage together and were on our way to Jerusalem. Some of the disciples from Caesarea went with us and took us to the home of Manason, who received us warmly as his guest. A native of Cyprus, he had been among the earliest disciples. In Jerusalem, our friends, glad to see us, received us with open arms. The first thing next morning, we took Paul to see James. All the church leaders were there. After a time of greeting and small talk, Paul told the story, detail by detail, of what God had done among the non-Jewish people through his ministry. They listened with delight and gave God the glory. They had a story to tell too. And just look at what's been happening here. Thousands upon thousands of God-fearing Jews have become believers in Jesus. But there's also a problem because they are more zealous than ever in observing the laws of Moses. They've been told that you advise believing Jews who live surrounded by unbelieving outsiders to go light on Moses, telling them that they don't need to circumcise their children or keep up the old traditions. This isn't sitting at all well with them. We're worried about what will happen when they discover you're in town. There's bound to be trouble. So here is what we want you to do. There are 4 men from our company who have taken a vow involving ritual purification, but have no money to pay the expenses. Join these men in their vows and pay their expenses. Then it will become obvious to everyone that there is nothing to the rumors going around about you, and that you are in fact scrupulous in your reverence for the laws of Moses. In asking you to do this, we're not going back on our agreement regarding non-Jews who have become believers. We continue to hold fast to what we wrote in that letter, namely, to be careful not to get involved in activities connected with idols, to avoid serving food offensive to Jewish Christians, to guard the morality of sex and marriage. So Paul did it, took them in, joined them in their vows, and paid their way. The next day he went to the temple to make it official, and stayed there until the proper sacrifices had been offered and completed for each of them. Allergies. When the 7 days of their purification were nearly up, some Jews from around Ephesus spotted him in the temple. At once they turned the place upside down. They grabbed Paul and started yelling at the top of their lungs. "Help, you Israelites, help! This is the man who's going all over the world, telling lies against us and our religion and this place." He's even brought Greeks in here and defiled this holy place. What had happened was that they had seen Paul and Trophimus, the Ephesian Greek, walking together in the city, and had just assumed that he had also taken him to the temple and shown him around. Soon the whole city was in an uproar, people running from everywhere to the temple to get in on the action. They grabbed Paul, dragged him outside, and locked the temple gates so he couldn't get back in and gain sanctuary. As they were trying to kill him, word came to the captain of the guard, a riot. The whole city's boiling over. He acted swiftly. His soldiers and centurions ran to the scene at once. As soon as the mob saw the captain and his soldiers, they quit beating Paul. The captain came up and put Paul under arrest. He first ordered him handcuffed and then asked who he was and what he had done. All he got from the crowds were shouts, one yelling this, another that. It was impossible to tell one word from another in the mob hysteria, so the captain ordered Paul taken back to the military barracks. But when they got to the temple steps, the mob became so violent that the soldiers had to carry Paul. As they carried him away, the crowd followed, shouting, "Kill him! Kill him!" When they got to the barracks and were about to go in, Paul said to the captain, "Can I say something to you?" He answered, "Oh, I didn't know you spoke Greek. Thought you were the Egyptian who not long ago started a riot here and then hid out in the desert with his 4,000 things." "No," Paul said, "I'm a Jew born in Tarsus, and I'm a citizen still of that influential city. I have a simple request. Let me speak to the crowd." Standing on the barrack steps, Paul turned and held his arms up. A hush fell over the crowd as Paul began to speak. He spoke in Hebrew. "My dear brothers and fathers, listen carefully to what I have to say before you jump to conclusions about me." When they heard him speaking Hebrew, they grew even quieter. No one wanted to miss a word of this. He continued, "I'm a good Jew, born in Tarsus in the province of Cilicia, but educated here in Jerusalem under the exacting eye of Rabbi Gamaliel, thoroughly instructed in our religious traditions. And I've always been passionately on God's side, just as you are right now. I went after anyone connected with this way, went at them hammer and tongs, ready to kill for God. I rounded up men and women right and left and had them thrown in prison. You can ask the chief priest or anyone in the high council to verify this. They all knew me well. Then I went off to our brothers in Damascus, armed with official documents authorizing me to hunt down the followers of Jesus there, arrest them, and bring them back to Jerusalem for sentencing. As I arrived on the outskirts of Damascus about noon, a blinding light blazed out of the skies, and I fell to the ground dazed. I heard a voice. Saul, Saul, why are you out to get me? Who are you, Master? I asked. He said, I am Jesus the Nazarene, the one you're hunting down. My companions saw the light, but they didn't hear the conversation. Then I said, What do I do now, Master? He said, Get to your feet and enter Damascus. There you'll be told everything that's been set out for you to do. And so we entered Damascus, but nothing like the entrance I had planned. I was blind as a bat, and my companions had to lead me in by the hand. That's when I met Ananias, a man with a sterling reputation in observing our laws. The Jewish community in Damascus is unanimous on that score. He came and put his arm around my shoulder. Look up, he said. I looked, found myself looking right into his eyes. I could see again. Then he said, The God of our ancestors has handpicked you to be briefed on his plan of action. You've actually seen the righteous innocent and heard him speak. You are to be a key witness to everyone you meet of what you've seen and heard. So what are you waiting for? Get up, get yourself baptized, scrubbed clean of these sins, and personally acquainted with God. Well, it happened just as Ananias said. After I was back in Jerusalem and praying one day in the temple, lost in the presence of God, I saw him. Saw God's righteous innocent. Sorry about that. Saw God's righteous innocent and heard him say to me, Hurry up, get out of here as quickly as you can. None of the Jews here in Jerusalem are going to accept what you say about me. At first I objected. Who has better credentials? They all know how obsessed I was with hunting out those who believed in you, beating them up in the meeting places and throwing them in jail. And when your witness Stephen was murdered, I was right there, holding the coats of the murderers and cheering them on. And now they see me totally converted. What better qualification could I have? He said, Don't argue. Go. I'm sending you on a long journey to outsider non-Jews. The people in the crowd had listened attentively up to this point, but now they broke loose, shouting out, Kill him! He's an insect! Stomp on him! They shook their fist. They filled the air with curses. That's when the captain intervened and ordered Paul taken into the barracks. By now the captain was thoroughly exasperated. He decided to interrogate Paul under torture in order to get to the bottom of this, to find out what he had done that provoked this outraged violence. As they spread-eagled him with thongs, getting him ready for the whip, Paul said to the centurion standing there, Is it legal torturing a Roman citizen without a fair trial? When the centurion heard this, he went directly to the captain. Do you realize what you've done? This man is a Roman citizen. The captain came back and took charge. Is what I hear right? You're a Roman citizen? Paul said, I certainly am. The captain was impressed. I paid a huge sum for my citizenship. How much did it cost you? Nothing, said Paul. It cost me nothing. I was free from the day of my birth. That put a stop to the interrogation, and it put the fear of God into the captain. He had put a Roman citizen in chains and come within a whisker of putting him under torture. The next day, determined to get to the root of the trouble and know for sure what was behind the Jewish accusation, the captain released Paul and ordered a meeting of the high priest and the high council to see what they could make of it. Paul was led in and took his place before them. Paul surveyed the members of the council with a steady gaze and then said his piece. Friends, I have lived with a clear conscience before God all my life, up to this very moment. That set the chief priest Ananias off. He ordered his aides to slap Paul in the face. Paul shot back. God will slap you down. What a fake you are. You sit there and judge me by law and then break the law by ordering me slapped around. The aides were scandalized. How dare you talk to God's chief priest like that? Paul acted surprised. How was I to know he was chief priest? He doesn't act like a chief priest. You're right, the scripture does say, don't speak abusively to a ruler of the people. Sorry. Paul, knowing some of the council was made up of Sadducees and others of Pharisees and how they hated each other, decided to exploit their antagonism. Friends, I am a stalwart Pharisee from a long line of Pharisees. It's because of my Pharisee convictions, the hope and resurrection of the dead, that I've been hauled into this court. The moment he said this, the council split right down the middle. Pharisees and Sadducees going at each other in heated argument. Sadducees have nothing to do with the resurrection or angels or even a spirit. They can't see it, they don't believe it. Pharisees believe it all. And so a huge and noisy quarrel broke out. Then some of the religion scholars on the Pharisee side shouted down the others. We don't find anything wrong with this man. And what if a spirit has spoken to him? Or maybe an angel? What if it turns out we're fighting against God? That was fuel on the fire. The quarrel flamed up and became so violent, the captain was afraid they would tear Paul apart, limb from limb. He ordered the soldiers to get him out of there and escorted him back to the safety of the barracks. That night the master appeared to Paul. It's going to be all right. Everything is going to turn out for the best. You've been a good witness for me here in Jerusalem. Now you're going to be my witness in Rome. Next day the Jews worked up a plot against Paul. They took a solemn oath that they would neither eat nor drink until they had killed him. Over 40 of them ritually bound themselves to this murder pact and presented themselves to the high priest and religious leaders. We've bound ourselves by a solemn oath to eat nothing until we've killed Paul, but we need your help. Send a request from the council to the captain to bring Paul back so you can investigate the charges in more detail. We'll do the rest. Before he gets anywhere near you, we'll have killed him. You won't be involved. Paul's nephew, his sister's son, overheard them plotting the ambush. He went immediately to the barracks and told Paul. Paul called over one of the centurions and said, "Take this young man to the captain. He has something important to tell him." The centurion brought him in to the captain and said, "The prisoner Paul asked me to bring this young man to you. He said he has something urgent to tell you." The captain took him by the arm and led him aside privately. "What is it? What do you have to tell me?" Paul's nephew said, "The Jews have worked up a plot against Paul. They're going to ask you to bring Paul to the council first thing in the morning, on the pretext they want to investigate the charges against him in more detail. But it's a trick to get him out of your safekeeping so they can murder him. Right now there are more than 40 men lying in ambush for him. They've all taken a vow to neither eat nor drink until they've killed him. The ambush is set. All they're waiting for is for you to send him over." The captain dismissed the nephew with a warning. "Don't breathe a word of this to a soul." The captain called up 2 centurions. "Get 200 soldiers ready to go immediately to Caesarea. Also 70 cavalry and 200 light infantry. I want them ready to march by 9 o'clock tonight. And you'll need a couple of mules for Paul and his gear. We're going to present this man safe and sound to Governor Felix." Then he wrote this letter. "From Claudius Lysias to the most honorable Governor Felix. Greetings. I rescued this man from a Jewish mob. They had seized him and were about to kill him when I learned that he was a Roman citizen. So I sent in my soldiers, wanting to know what he had done wrong. I had him brought before their council. It turned out to be a squabble turned vicious over some of their religious differences, but nothing remotely criminal. The next thing I knew, they had cooked up a plot to murder him. I decided that for his own safety I'd better get him out of here in a hurry, so I'm sending him to you. I'm informing his accuser that he's now under your jurisdiction. The soldiers, following orders, took Paul that same night to safety in Antipatris. In the morning, the soldiers returned to their barracks in Jerusalem, sending Paul on to Caesarea under guard of the cavalry. The cavalry entered Caesarea and handed Paul and the letter over to the governor. After reading the letter, the governor asked Paul what province he came from and was told Cilicia. Then he said, I'll take up your case when your accusers show up. He ordered him locked up for the meantime in King Herod's official quarters. And that is it for today's Bible reading. As always, get in touch with God today, and I will see you again tomorrow. Bye.